Okay, today we're going to discuss handling interpersonal conflict within the workplace. So, there are 5 different styles of conflict. Your first style we're going to discuss is avoidance. So, this is when individuals essentially just avoid conflict altogether. So, they delay decisions and deadlines, they separate themselves, they remove themselves from a situation. All of this essentially, they are just going to avoid each other to avoid having a discussion, which avoids the conflict. That's all from Indeed Career Guide 2019. So this can cause frustrations, unresolved feelings, which eventually can lead to tumultuous relationships down the line. Again, Indeed Career Guide 2019. The one benefit with avoidance is that it does give both parties times to process the conflict at hand. So maybe if you're having a highly emotional or charged discussion or situation, sometimes giving employees time to just separate, process their emotions, and be ready to actually have a productive discussion can be really beneficial. So again, Indeed Career Guide 2019. Second style of conflict we're going to talk about is competition. So this is when you just directly address a conflict. So you're assertive, sometimes you're uncooperative, but it does end a conflict really, really quickly. So it's very efficient, very fast. All of that's from Indeed Career Guide 2019. Really, one of your downsides with this method is that there is the potential to stifle input from others. So a lot of times in conflict, you really need to have a discussion to find the best solution. And when you're following a competition style, you're not having that discussion. You're simply just ending the conflict. So then we're going to talk about accommodation style. So this is kind of the opposite of competing. So this is the opposite of the competition style. So really, you're going to be giving into that opposing party. You're accommodating their needs, accommodating their wants, accommodating their desires. So that's all from Indeed Career Guide 2019. So sometimes this style is really beneficial if you're working with someone who's very abrasive, who's a very strong personality, who's not willing to discuss other options except for their own. Then an accommodation style might be the way you have to handle the conflict. When doing the style of accommodation, it's important to accept other viewpoints. So it's very important to understand what the other people want, but you also need to be able to recognize when what they want is detrimental to what you want. So you have to understand your values and then how their values and their desires play into yours. And that's from Indeed Career. So we're going to talk about compromise. So this is the lose-lose method. So the thing about compromise is both parties are giving up things that they want to try to find the solution, which means in the end, neither party gets what they wanted, and you have a solution, but it's probably not ideal. So really, the goal of a compromise is to make small sacrifices and hopefully find common ground on your larger issues. That's from Indeed Career Guide 2019. And sometimes compromise can be really beneficial. If you're looking at short-term productivity, we just need to get this done. We need to keep going. Let's just find a compromise and move on. That can be really beneficial. But if you're looking for long-term issues, long-term solutions, compromise probably isn't the answer. And that's from Indeed Career Guide 2019. So we're going to talk about collaboration. So this is your win-win method. So collaborating is when you find a solution that satisfies all parties involved. That's from Indeed Career Guide 2019. So what you're going to really do here is you're going to listen, you're going to communicate, you're going to work to understand. So in a negotiation, in a conflict, in a discussion, really the main thing you need to figure out is what does the other party value? What is their motivation? What drives them? What do they want? And then you need to look at what you want, and you need to find a way to get both of you what you want, which is what collaboration focuses on. So you're finding a solution together, and it's really long-term satisfying results. So collaboration is ultimately very much a primary form of conflict style if possible, because it's just so much more beneficial in the long term. And that's all from Indeed Career Guide 2019. So we're going to talk about which conflict styles I utilize in the workplace. So I use a lot of collaboration and competition in my role as an HR generalist. I rarely use avoidance. So as an HR generalist, basically avoiding conflict, not an option, not super effective. Sometimes we will give employees a cool off period or a cool down period, which could be considered some avoidance, just so they're able to have an adult conversation and not just have an emotionally charged conversation. But I frequently use collaboration because I think you need to build a team, and especially as HR, we are the human resource. So I'm a resource for leaders and a resource for employees. So I need to be able to collaborate to understand and find long-term solutions. We do use competition sometimes if we have an employee who's maybe combative, who's maybe not wanting to follow a policy, maybe something like that, where it's pretty cut and dry, it's a pretty black and white situation, then I'll use a competitive conflict style just to end the conflict and move forward. So in research conducted by Henry Eshelman, Croxton, and Moynes in 2018, it was found that 53% of employees experienced dysfunction in the workplace, and most of them cited leadership as that main factor. So then, what is even more interesting is only 42% of the employees surveyed indicated that they'd been trained to handle workplace conflict. So these tie together because if you have leadership that is dysfunctional and causing dysfunction in the workplace, and then you only have less than half of your employees and leadership, presumptively, have been trained on conflict management, now you have a dysfunctional workplace where no one knows how to handle conflict. So this is really where the key to Henry Eshelman, Croxton, and Moynes' research in 2018 kicks in, is we need to train employees, number one, how to recognize conflict and then how to handle conflict. And then we need to train our leadership how to address conflict, how to handle conflict, and how to create a functional workplace as opposed to a dysfunctional workplace. So then the role of gender in workplace conflict. So gender complicates a lot of different things when you look at workplace conflict, but it's also very much based upon the individuals of that gender, the workplace culture, and the individuals within the conflict. So in Massey University 2017, it was found that different expectations for supervisors based upon their gender. So they did a study that showed how females view their male supervisors and their female supervisors. So females expect their female bosses to be more focused on relationship building, but they don't expect that from their male bosses. And then that's Massey 2017. So essentially what was happening is females were having this negative viewpoint of their female bosses if they were not focused on relationship building, whereas when the male bosses were not focused on relationship building, it didn't impact their view of them at all. So this is interesting and it's important because as the role of gender in workplace conflict, if me as a female or if the females in the study are expecting this female leader to be more in tune with my emotional needs and my relationship building needs, and they're not, I'm already going into this with a negative connotation, when if the supervisor was a male, I would never associate that connotation with this. So really the consequences of gender's impact. So there are so many different consequences. We're just going to talk about a few of them. So there are so many preconceived notions of men and women, which again plays into this study that I discussed in the previous slide regarding a female boss and a male boss and the female's views of what the female and male boss should focus on. So you have preconceived notions of men and women from career goals, life goals, communication styles, all of that kind of stuff. Then you have differing work environments. So in research done by Danielson, Bolden, Wolf, and Thorell in 2015, they actually found that differing work environments and noise disturbances impact genders differently, which then impacts workplace conflict differently. So work environments and noise disturbances were significantly impacting workplace conflict for women, but they did not impact workplace conflict for men. So they put women and men in the same scenarios and they introduced noise disturbances, and women were much more likely to be impacted, which caused conflict, versus men who were able to ignore the noise disturbances. So again, this is just another example of the consequence of gender's impact on conflict. So we're going to talk about the role of culture. So within our workforce, we have diverse workplace teams, and they have so many benefits. You get different experiences, different ideas, you get new ways to solve problems, all of these great things. But all of those differences can lead to conflict. So conflicts can include unresolved problems, communication gaps, tensions among employees. All of that's from Great People Inside 2019. So then you also have direct and indirect cultural conflict and the impact it has on the morale of employees in the workplace. So that's again Great People 2019. So what they mean by that is if you have a direct conflict with someone, you're engaged in that conflict. It's very clear. It's you and this person and you are having a conflict. But that also impacts the other people in the workplace. So if you're in an office of 10 people and maybe 2 people are having a conflict, everyone else in the workplace is going to be impacted, and their morale is also impacted as a result of that workplace conflict. So really the consequences of culture's impact. So again, we've got diverse experiences, educations, backgrounds, so many benefits. Also, definitely provides the potential for increased workplace conflict if you're not training employees how to handle and educating employees on diversity and inclusion. So businesses fail to integrate employees. They fail to provide training on how to interact with people that are different from yourself. So all of us have our own set of notions and communications, and we are not trained to work with people that are different from us. often that leads to conflict. And that's again from Great People Inside 2019. So then the other issue that we run into is individuals will sometimes make assumptions about others based upon their cultures, which can then also spark conflict. So really, it's important to be open, honest, communicative, and ask questions. Try to understand and then be respectful of other people's cultures, other people's communication styles, and their conflict styles. And then we're just going to hop to our references here. Thank you so much.